All right, welcome to our latest opponent preview, and we're looking at Oregon State today. And please be joined by Nick Daschel of the Oregonian. And Nick, thanks for joining me. I appreciate it.
Sure, no problem.
Well, you've been covering the Beavers for a while. I have a long history with the Beavers as you went to school there, and I've covered them off and on. So you've seen this program a lot over the years, and the past several years, Jonathan Smith has kind of gotten this thing in that nice upward trajectory. Where do you feel like this program is under him right now?
Well, it's at the apex for sure. I mean, Jonathan's got he got everybody when they come in to take over a program, Colorado included. The first thing they talk about is culture, and it's kind of a wide a term of means a lot of stuff, but sometimes doesn't end up meaning anything.
Yeah.
With Jonathan, it's really been the whole thing. He's got guys to buy into what they want to do. They don't get the 5-star guys, but they get guys to stick around. The coaching staff has been, for the most part, has been there since Jonathan took over from the get go. He gets guys to stick around, and then they prosper with the juniors and seniors that are in the program. That's what happened last year, and kind of what I expect this year is that the juniors and seniors are going to lead the way again.
Yeah, it's interesting. When you look around how teams are using the transfer portal, and Colorado is an extreme example, so we're not going to go there. I mean, they're changing everything, but a lot of schools are, they'll have 20, 30 guys out, 15, 20 guys in. Oregon State doesn't have very many guys out. They don't bring very many guys in, and they kind of plug some holes where they're needed. It's sort of interesting seeing there's not a ton of guys that leave this program.
Well, this year, early on when Jonathan first took over, they did have quite a few transfers come in, but they got them based on needs they had: receivers, defensive linemen, guys on defense, whatnot. But this year, I mean, after spring ball, you kind of expect half a dozen scholarship guys to look elsewhere because they know they're probably for whatever reason, and nobody left. The only guys that left were walk-ons, which not surprising.
Yeah,
I think they were the only team. Maybe there was one other school in the conference that had the same thing, but gosh, I mean, they hardly had anybody leave even after the end of the season last year. So it's been like I said, whatever Jonathan's selling to them, they're buying.
Yeah, well, and they should have a pretty good team this year. I mean, they've been pretty good the last couple of years. Last year was a really nice year, and now the big thing with them last year, and even though when I went out there, for Colorado's game, and they beat up Colorado pretty good, like everybody else did, but the one thing they were really missing was that quarterback. It was up and down with quarterback, but now they bring in DJ from Clemson. What are the thoughts around DJ coming in here and how he meshes with this team, and what kind of dynamic does he bring?
Well, it's a bit of an unknown because we don't know what DJ are going to get. Is it going to be the guy that we saw when he was a freshman at Clemson? Is it going to be a totally different DJ because he's in a system that fits him better? He was kind of going through a feeling out process this spring with learning the system and whatnot. But I expect come August, we'll see really what he is. And I think there's some people thinking that Michael Penix was in the same situation when he came from Indiana. He wasn't really lighting the world on fire, and he came to Washington, got in the right situation, and blossomed. And I mean, if that happens with DJ, this team's on a track to get to the Pac-12 championship game because the rest of the offense is in good shape. It's just can they get a guy playing quarterback that's dynamic as opposed to a game manager, and that's kind of what Ben Gulbranson was last year.
Yeah, I mean, Bo Nix was another one that didn't really light the world on fire at Auburn. Comes to Oregon, has a phenomenal year. So around DJ, and it's funny with DJ because they were disappointed with him at Clemson, but you look at his numbers and like they're actually pretty solid, but for Clemson standards, they were not up to par. I mean, if he puts up similar numbers, at Oregon State, you say, wow, that's pretty good. Or for most places in the Pac-12, right?
Right, and if DJ just duplicated the numbers he had at Clemson, that would be a step up for Oregon State. But they're going to lead with their running game, regardless of who's playing quarterback.
Yeah, and it starts with Damian, right? Damian Martinez, almost 1,000 yards last year. I imagine he's the leader of that group.
It does, but it really starts with the offensive line. The offensive line is going to be it's been solid the last 3 or 4 years, and this line could potentially be as good as it's ever been under Jonathan. And Jim Mahalchik has done miracles with these guys. None of them are came to Oregon State as 5-star linemen. Most of them are 3-star types. He's just developed them into the tackles. Colley on the right side and Joshua Gray on the left side. I mean, they're Sunday guys. When they leave Oregon State, they're gonna play in the NFL. And so you got 2 tackles. You got a guy at center, Jake Levengood, who's being touted as the first team All Pac-12 guy. They've got experience at the guards. It's the offensive line that's just going to make this offense go this next year. And it was that case last year too. I just think they're even a little bit better this year.
Yeah, well, that's scary for a lot of the Pac-12. And another thing that they did well last year is they played really good defense. How does that defense look this year?
Well, that's kind of going to be that's a little bit of an unknown because they did lose quite a few guys off and not talented guys as much as leadership guys. Yeah. And can they fill in those leadership positions? The quarterback situation, they lost 2 guys to the NFL. They'll have to replace them. That's going to be a big question mark going into camp. It looks like they got some guys that could play there, but I mean, they're replacing Rajon Wright and Alex Austin. Those are 2 pretty solid corners. They should be fairly solid at safety. Most of their guys are back, and they're going to get Alton Julian back, who looked like an all-conference safety before he got hurt against Utah.
Right.
The other area on defense is just going to be a big question is inside linebacker. They lost 3 of their top 4 guys. Omar Spates went to LSU. Jack Colletto's off to play for the 49ers. Kyrie Fisher-Morris is in the CFL. That was a pretty solid group of inside linebackers, and they got some guys that got potential there as well. But they got to prove it. The defensive line, Jonathan thinks this is the best defensive line he's ever had. That doesn't mean that they're all Pac-12 word, but if they're good enough up there, I think that the rest of the defense can make plays. If they're even close to as good a defense as last year, I mean, this team it's a 10-win team at least again this year.
Yeah, well, you mentioned Jack Coletto, and he's a guy that seemed like he was there forever. Actually started a game at quarterback against Colorado. We saw him, obviously that fullback type. He was that short yardage guy, all-purpose back. Is there anybody they have like that, or was that more of like a special Jack Coletto type of role that they carved out for him?
Yeah, I mean, Oregon State fans have been talking about it for a year. Who's our next Jack Coletto? Well, those guys just don't exist. He's a unicorn. I mean, he was a quarterback who's got a fullback mentality and he's a linebacker. He's just unique. Now they're going to try. I'm sure they're going to try some stuff. I mean, they're working on a few guys that might line up as a H-back and play a little bit of the fullback role that Jack played, but I don't know they're going to have a quarterback that's going to do quite the same things that Jack Coletto did.
Yeah. So this team, you mentioned potential Pac-12 title, and people are going to talk about USC, rightfully so. Utah's won it the last couple of years, Oregon, Washington, things like that. But where does Oregon State fit? I mean, is this team potentially the Pac-12 champion?
Well, I mean, if the quarterback position improves, if the defense is close to as good as a year ago, their schedule is what is the other component that makes them dangerous. I mean, they have 9 conference games, obviously. 5 of them are on the road, but it's Arizona, it's Colorado, it's Washington State, it's Cal, and it is. Did I say Arizona? I can't remember.
Yeah, you did.
But they're all 5. They're all 5. Oh, Oregon is the other of the 5 road games. Oregon is the only game that, on paper, you would say they won't be favored. They definitely won't be favored at Oregon. The other 4, they could be favored on the road. So they're playing their easier games on the road, and they're playing Utah, Washington, Stanford, and I'm blanking on UCLA at home. So, and the research has become a tough place to play. So they don't play USC and they don't play Arizona State, but mostly they don't play USC. So they have a really good schedule. They have a schedule, and the buys in a good place. It's just it sets up if those other things come together, the defense and the quarterback position.
Yeah, and then one last thing for you, Research Stadium. I was there last year. It was under construction. They had, the kind of the construction trailers that we were in for the press box. But is it fully restored now? And like, are they ready to go?
It's about three. What are we on? It's supposed to be ready in a couple weeks, 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay.
It's virtually done. The seats are almost all in. Most of the infrastructure's in. They're supposed to start moving things in, later this month. So there's nothing that's going to keep research, as far as I know, from not being ready for the opener.
Yeah, so I'm sure
which is week 2. It's week 2 for them at home.
Yeah, which I'm sure that's adding a lot of excitement to this year, is just having that revamped stadium.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's particularly since they've lost one game in the last 2 years at Research, so they've kind of thought this is an advantage for them. The stadium's small, but it's really noisy when the place is full.
Yeah, it was really noisy last year when it was half full. You
Yeah.
get that chainsaw going and all that, and it gets pretty noisy.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's always a great atmosphere there, and this team it's been fun to watch. From the outside, see Jonathan Smith build this. From really maybe the worst team in the Pac-12 at the time he took over, to now being one of the best. And so it's been interesting watching this, and this team will be a fascinating team to watch, I think.
Yeah, I mean, another wild card on this team is how does Everett Hayes bounce back as a place kicker? And I know he's just a place kicker, but a couple of games are going to come down to a field goal at the end.
Yeah.
And he had a groin injury most of last year, and he was a little shaky. He's been a little shaky the last couple of years, and so they need him to bounce back to back to form, and they'll probably need him to make a couple of kicks in the last 2 minutes of a game, to win or lose the game. So that's another wild card that's worth watching with Oregon State.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, I appreciate it, Nick, and look forward to seeing you this season, and we'll see what happens with the Oregon State Beavers.